everybody. This is Joe Moore coming back again for Psychedelics Today. Hope you're doing well. I'm here in beautiful, sunny Breckenridge, Colorado, and it is an amazing day here. Today on the show, we have a really interesting guest. This is a little bit of a turn for many of you. This is a musician, actually. His name, acting name is East Forest. I've been aware of East Forest for a long time. This album that we chat about a little bit on the show came out, years ago, and it was affiliated with this kind of podcast network that Lorenzo from the Psychedelic Salon was affiliated with, the Grow Report forums and the Dope Fiend and all. There's a bunch, like probably 8 different podcasts in that zone, and I think this sense of community and that collective of podcasts is partly what got me really interested in doing my own. So I have a lot to be thankful for from those folks, and East Forest played a huge part. He was really a beautiful artist, and you can really, I hope in this interview, sense what that's about. And the tracks are available on Spotify, and you can buy the really high quality ones on the website. So check that out. If you want to support the show, please do. We've got a bunch of different ways. You can leave a monthly donation on Patreon. We've got courses available. We actually even have free courses available. There's one course on our site called 8 Common Psychedelic Mistakes, and another one called Spiritual Emergence or Psychosis, which is a big deal in the psychedelic space. How do we differentiate and know when people need to go get hospitalized and otherwise? The biggest thing we have on the table right now is 3 different editions of Navigating Psychedelics, live editions. We have one for a general audience. We have one for clinicians, so like nurses, therapists, etc. Doctors could also join that one. And a doctor-specific one. So if you're a physician and you want to jump in, we have a physician helping us teach this one. As of right now, it is exclusively Dr. Matt Brown, who has been on the show. He also completed the CIIS training not that long ago, and he's been a long-time friend of the show, so I think that's going to be great. If we are able, we're going to bring in other doctors as well to help us out. So those are launching in May. There are limited seats for those. I think there's only 10 seats for each one of those tracks, so if you want to get in, jump in sooner than later so that you can secure your space. The main reason you want to take these things is they will help you be safer with psychedelics. Help you be the lifeguard for your friends, or if you're trying to get into this field, this is just a great way to get a good survey of data around the field. And we've had some amazing testimonials. You can check those out on our site. And we have a 100% money back guarantee. If you don't like it, we'll give you your money back. I think it's, as of right now, 30-day money back guarantee. And if you don't want to do the live one, if it's a little too expensive for you, we have a pre-recorded one that you can check out, just called Navigating Psychedelics. And we think they're amazing, and they could really help you level up your psychedelic education. And what else? We've got a couple books for sale on Amazon. You search Navigating Psychedelics on Amazon, you're going to find them. Hard copy. You can also find digital copies on our site, psychedelicstodayshop.com. The Amazon stuff, we just haven't figured out how to do Kindle yet. We'll probably get there soon, but I don't know that the books translate well to Kindle. I think the PDF is just the best, but we'll see where we go with it. I don't know. If you're interested, here's a big bit of information. If you're interested in joining us for one-on-one mushroom sessions, we're going to be doing that in Jamaica in July. So hit us up, Psychedelics Today, email@gmail.com. We'll send you a couple links to get the process going. We're trying to be really safe here and provide an optimal experience with a lot of coaching ahead of time and a lot of coaching after. So if you're interested, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to support the show but don't have much money, just leave us a review on Facebook or iTunes or something. We would really love it. Or just tell some friends. Anyway, thanks again for listening here, and I hope you enjoy this great interview with East Forest. He's a beautiful artist. Definitely check out his tunes. See you on the other side.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Psychedelics Today with your host Kyle Buller and Joe Moore. Today we're joined by East Forest, a musician who has some pretty awesome music, just released an album with some samples from Ram Dass. I was actually just listening to it a few hours ago, really awesome. So excited to have you on, East Forest.
Yeah. Thank you.
I first came across some of your work. Somebody actually recommended some of your music in terms of using it for breath work. So I thought that was interesting. That was a few years ago. So I've been listening to your stuff on and off for a few years. I know Joe said he's been into some of your work for a while as well.
How did it go with the breath work?
I actually haven't compiled anything yet. I've been using all these old playlists, so hopefully I can start crafting some new ones soon, and I'll definitely incorporate some of your music in there.
All right. I'll keep me updated.
Yeah. Cool. Do you want to, fill anything in and give a little background to the listeners about who you are?
Sure. I mean, East Forest is my musical project that I've been doing for about 10 years now. And it started from pretty humble beginnings of just looking for making music for myself to use in a shamanic, meditative way. And how that all just sort of unfolded was really just beautiful, and it just was a very personal process for me. Mm-hmm. And then I just started sharing that with other people, and friends of mine started organizing circles, medicine circles for me to play music for. And then that unfolded for many years, and then just became more of a public interface with kind of going out in the world. And more or less all the things I'm putting out there with East Forest in general is about introspection and giving people tools and ways to learn about themselves and empower things from the inside out. And so most of that's through my music, but then I started branching out to other things like retreats or podcasts, just different doorways for people to come in, and so that's where it's been. And yeah, I've been doing a record with Ram Dass this whole year, and I got the chance to go out there and record them and ask questions, and we're kind of putting a record together that's coming out in 4 parts. And so I think it's only halfway out actually right now.
Yeah, I think I saw 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Been pretty awesome so far. What kind of inspired you to do a project like that?
Well, he's just been a really important spiritual icon and figure in my life. And I don't know about you, but I listened to a lot of Terence McKenna talks at one point in my life. There was a real phase where I got deep into that world. And Ram Dass was just another voice out there in the psychedelic landscape that really spoke to me, something about the combination of his background at Harvard and sort of his intellectual side and then his spiritual side, and sort of bringing those two worlds together. And he's a very entertaining speaker. And so I just had the idea of doing a record with a bunch of spiritual teachers, 13, but then my manager thought that was a bit crazy sounding, ambitious. And so he said, how about 1? And he suggested I focus on Ram Dass. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, I'd love that. He's a lion in my life. So long story short, we reached out and we hooked it up, and we've been doing it. It's been amazing.
I bet that's probably a super humbling experience for you, to meet somebody that you probably looked up to for a while. How's that been?
I mean, he's 87. I don't know how much you know about him, but he had a stroke 20 years ago and has been in Maui ever since. Because it was really hard for him to travel after that. So he was out there, I think, for a conference or something. And he's been in a wheelchair, and he got aphasia from the stroke. So it's a little bit hard for him to connect what he's thinking into verbalization of words. Mm-hmm. So there can be very long pauses between his words. So it's all working inside. He just can't always get it out.
Right.
So I might ask a question, and it would take 15, 20, 30 minutes for him to answer. And I would condense that down into 1 minute of actual talking. So this medium with the music worked really well for him because the pauses, in a sense, became an advantage. And then I could change the timing of what he said, not rearrange the order, but the timing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like he came alive inside the music, because you don't even think about the pauses when it's in the music.
Right.
And it's like, oh my God, Ram Dass is sort of like back to his verbal life, but he has the voice of his being an 87-year-old. He sounds like Gandalf or something at times. And it's kind of an amazing weight of wisdom and time that you hear in it. So, but I think you were asking me if it was humbling or something, but yes, it was incredibly so. Getting into his room alone with him in his study at his house. When I was finally there alone, I think it hit me when I realized like it's sort of like the spiritual White House. And it's not something there's a lot of hoops you have to get through to kind of get to that point. So it was very special.
Yeah, I could imagine. I'm just thinking about like some of the teachers and whatnot that I've met, and sometimes I'm just like, don't really know what to say. So yeah, it's got to be really cool to sit down and create a project like that. And it's a really great record. I think I started listening to the second one today. And I really appreciated the home track, I think, because it starts off where it's like, psilocybin is an old friend of mine or something like that. And
it's the best opening line. I asked him a long winding question about the state of current psychedelic assisted therapy and psilocybin emerging more and more in the cultural consciousness, and Michael Pollan's book, blah blah blah. And then he just paused, and the first thing he said into the mic was, "Psilocybin is my friend," which is funny and like classic Ram Dass. And then of course he tells his story of the first time he did psilocybin, and it was with Timothy Leary and Allen Ginsberg, which it's a hell of a first trip. And I guess it got kind of nutty for him and loud, so he went into another room and he kind of lost his sense of his body. And it was the first time, as he describes it, he felt at home and in that space of oneness and love. And he credits psilocybin to starting him on his spiritual path from the beginning. Like that was the thing that got him into it, and now he's what he is all these years later.
How long were you in Maui with him?
I was there a week. Yeah. I'm actually going back. He's got a retreat he does twice a year there. Yeah. So I'm going back for the spring retreat.
Well, that's awesome. And did you have him mic'd up or something the whole time, or how did that work out for you?
Yeah. I mean, my vision was that I'd go over there with really nice recording equipment and put a really nice mic in front of him, and so that the whole record could focus on his voice and be a really nice quality representation of that. So I worked really hard on like the quality of the recordings and the mixing and stuff. And I think he sounds fantastic. And each song we're trying to fit to the subject of what he's saying. There's 14 songs ultimately. So there's sort of like 14 micro teachings. And I tried to write music to each of them that would support that vision, support what he's saying, the feeling of it.
That's pretty cool. So you took the recordings and what he was saying and tried to create music to that,
Yeah, kind of like a film score. So I basically wrote songs after I got back, I saw what we had. And so essentially I asked questions and he would answer, but he would often just riff from there. And these are the things he wanted to talk about. This is what he felt was relevant now for our lives today. And I thought that was really cool.
Right. What's one thing that I guess really stood out for you working with him, or maybe one, I mean, I'm sure there's probably many insights or pieces of wisdom that you learned, but yeah, I don't know, anything that really stood out from working with him with this project?
Yeah, as you said, it's still kind of unfolding for me. I'm literally before we started this, still mixing the second parts, but there's two things come to mind. One is he keeps talking about this sort of witness consciousness. Let's call it your viewpoint of things from the soul, and from that witness place is sort of where everything for him was, where you can love everyone, where you can have compassion for this, where you can love your dark thoughts, where you can tell the truth, and essentially that's the place of our consciousness to kind of sit in a lot. And I thought that was really interesting. There's a song called Dark Thoughts, and it's about, I was asking about dark thoughts, anxiety, suicide, all this stuff that's going on and increasing. And his answer was essentially like about how you can love your dark thoughts. And I was like, well, that's so interesting. We usually hear about essentially how do we get rid of them?
Right.
And this was like, you're not going to get rid of them, but you can love them. And from this other place of yourself, that's where you can love that stuff. And something about that's very poetic and unique and inclusive as opposed to pushing something away, which I found smart and beautiful. That's one of my favorite songs. It's on chapter 1. But otherwise, that song you just mentioned, Home, and sort of thinking about Ram Dass as the psychedelic grandfather of our country, essentially, along with Timothy Leary. And it just is so interesting how, they got kicked out of Harvard for some of their early psilocybin and psychedelic experiments they were doing there. And here we are, what was that, like 50 years later or so, and psilocybin is poised as the next, major breakthrough medicine for a wide range of ailments, but mental health stuff. And that's just very timely for me because that's, like I was saying, is something I've been working with for many years. And that's why, and I've had music from that was for and from that ceremony space, psilocybin, but I never overtly released it that way or really said this is what it's for. It sort of danced around. But the cultural winds are such that it makes sense now. And I've been doing this for, there's 10 years of sort of being in a lab, in a sense, with people trying things and testing things like what works and what helps us through this and to make it more successful and more positive, reliably so. And so that's why I wanted to release that sister record in this May 9th. That's a 5-hour record, and it's called Music for Mushrooms, a soundtrack for the psychedelic practitioner. And it's meant to take you from start to finish through the journey. And I think there's nothing out there like it right now that's specifically designed for this. And it needs to be, because I just see there's a real hole that we're not filling or missing the mark with the sort of music and playlists that have been put together for these journeys. I don't know if you're familiar with that stuff, like at Johns Hopkins and Imperial College and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Joe, what is his name?
Mendel Kaelin with Wave Paths.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to say, Kyle?
Yeah. For some reason, I always mix up the M and the K. I always want to say Kendall, but I know it's Mendel. Dyslexia of some sort.
Right.
He has been doing a lot of research with music, so it is a really fascinating topic.
Yeah, he's got an interesting project going that's sort of an amalgamation. It's like, I like the technology side of it, of sort of like trying to build things. There's a lot of, that is the other direction it could go, which sounds kind of crazy, is like an AI direction where it's sort of trying to suss out what you need, perhaps even making it in real time. But that's a whole nother, that isn't here yet. Right now,
that's a good 10 years out for sure.
Yeah.
But somebody like you who knows the space and knows music, you could put together something really amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's a really beautiful record I'm proud of. And it's just a real beast to put it out and get it together. Cause 5 hours is a lot to mix, or if you're trying to make changes, just to listen to it, it's a lot of music. But it's not that it wouldn't work on its own for other stuff, just to listen to or hang out or study. It's just that it's specifically designed for that one purpose, and that's what it was made for.
It's really excellent. So would you? I don't think you put out a record and say this is how many grams you eat, but I'm guessing anywhere from 2 to 9 grams or something like that would fit into the program.
9 grams. Good God, man. What are you, an elephant? It's
you never know.
Yes, you would never know. Hey, that's up to you. What do you think is right for you? But everybody's different, but it's there to support you through that. So they kind of, in a sense, that as a guide, it's sort of a digital guide. And you press play, and when it's done, you've sort of made it through that time. You don't have to think about it. So, but it's. music plays a very, very central role in, or can at least, especially in psychedelic assisted therapy. It's sort of the main way they work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, it can change and make or break the experience, like what you put on. And so adding to that, elements that take you through in a really cohesive way, like whether it's modern and old sound healing techniques, but also music that's familiar to our ears with a Western sort of bent to it, but is rising and falling and growing gradually. Maybe, these songs are 30 minutes. It really gives you time to get into a space and to be there for a while and do some work. And in that song will slowly, gradually end. And then there's a break. And then before we jump into the next thing of just like field recordings, so you can kind of rest and be in this liminal space. And then it's building and there's like a tension and a release. And that's all to help you do the work. And a lot of it's artistic, but it's just stuff, again, that I feel just through doing it with people, I feel like, oh, this works better than this. And so this becomes something I integrate in a certain moment or something.
Right. Did you do any like research on the music theory behind how, say, people like Johns Hopkins have constructed playlists, or like the breathwork community constructs playlists? Mm-hmm. Or was this kind of just based off of your own experience and maybe something that like, you just found to be useful?
I mean, I did definitely look at what people have written about it. There are a few papers too, like there is some actual research on it that's out there. And I feel like this is a very open community of sharing information. So I've read what there is, but the answer is both. I mean, a lot of it was too, just in real time. There's nothing better than, and because it's specific to what I'm making in my music, and they haven't been out there using that. I saw what, they've been using other stuff. So it's not a direct translation for me of like, I can do this or I can do that and it'll just work. But I know that the musical lexicon that I'm using in all of my music came from that space, because that's why I loop, because I needed ways to play by myself for a long time. I do a lot of vocalizations singing wise, but I'm not using English. It's sort of vowels and stuff. And that came out of that space too, because I like to use vocals, but I don't want to aggravate your language parts of your brain. Right. And we want to keep it in that space. So that's intentional too. And so it all just sorts of builds together. And then it comes through as a creative thing. Actually, another big difference that I forgot to mention is that, this is recorded live and it's improvised live. So it's in that space, from that space, responding to that stuff. And so what you're hearing is actually, in the most esoteric sense, it's music from the mushrooms. And you're hearing something sort of be birthed. And I couldn't play those songs again. I'd have to, without relearning them, I'd have to figure out what happened there and like write it down. And I've never played them again. And so there's a moment in time too. And obviously that's somewhat different than the studio music or something that's in these other playlists.
Fascinating. So you were in that space, is what you're saying, creating this.
Yeah, it's actually just 2 days of a weekend where I did 2 different nights last summer. So it's literally just stuck straight through those nights. There's moments where I'm not on the mic, I'm out in the room, so I couldn't include those. But to get 5 hours, it was a bit of both nights.
That's really cool. Were you on like a dose where it was like really hard to be on the computer or mess with like any of your musical stuff?
No, it's lower. It's lower because it's a lot. Yeah, it is a lot of knobs and stuff. It's enough that I can sense the energy in my body, and I can tell where people are at, and I just feel open to that spirit being in me, and because my goal is to sort of get out of the way, and at its best, it's kind of flowing through, and I hope it, wherever creativity and the muse come from, it's something larger than me. And so I'm sort of the vessel that's coming through. And it's worse, it's me thinking too much and this and that. So it goes in waves in a way, where you fall into it and you fall out of it. But when those moments are there where it's really free, and you're in that space, it's really magical. And something occurred those 2 nights that didn't really hit me until later. Like, as I've been working on it and sort of putting on the mixing head and like the mastering head and doing that kind of stuff, I'm looking at it more objectively, and I can't quite figure out what the hell happened. Like, I'm like, how did that? It's a few really beautiful moments that I don't understand, but I'm excited to get it out.
It's really cool. Did you have any kind of main? This is always a hard question, but like influences or inspirations in terms of other artists who had, not too many people have done this kind of thing. This sounds extraordinarily unique, but there's certainly been 5-hour live music sets before. Anything come to mind with that?
Yeah, you're right. There was no direct comparison, but I have lots of artists that influenced me, and one was Keith Jarrett. He's a jazz pianist, classical pianist, and he used to do these. He still does them. These long form solo piano improvisations where he just sits down and goes. And those like his album, The Köln Concert, was really a powerful one for me. And just this idea that you can get into a trance space and record and perform for that long was really inspirational.
That's really cool. There's this somewhat abstract jazz movement called Third Stream that makes me think a little bit of this. It's not exactly, well, Third Stream's kind of old now. We've made it a lot of progress since then, but it's this like mixture of classical meets jazz, and sometimes people trance out pretty hard. I think trance in music is really underexplored. It's one of the more interesting things to me in music.
The ability to get into trance?
Right. Well, almost like you've blacked out for 30 minutes, but you just performed like the most extraordinary thing. But it's like this something else taking over. It's clearly different from your creative process, but really interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, if you think about historically with music too, I think that's a lot of its roots, originally, more than entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's kind of rewind the clock a little bit. So I ran into your work way back related to the Psychedelic Salon. There was a whole bunch of peripheral podcasts like let's see, Black Beauty, the Dope Fiend, who's kind of a UK cannabis podcaster. The Crow Report Forum. There's a whole bunch of others.
I have a funny memory of maybe it was the Dope Fiend or one of those guys. He played one of my songs on his Christmas show.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things like he told me he's like, I'm going to play it. I'm like, awesome. And I tune in, and he waited till the end of the show. And I guess, they smoke weed on their show
a lot,
and by the time he got to the end of the show, he was so high he couldn't remember my name. He's sitting there being like, I can't remember who this is. I don't know, we're just gonna play it. Oh my god. And he starts laughing and just plays the song. And I'll just never forget his Christmas special where he almost made it.
It was this guy, it might have been this guy Queer Ninja, who had like
Queer
the best
Ninja.
music show
that was
ever.
It. Yes,
it was so good.
Queer Ninja.
I wish I could find the MP3s. He was amazing, but he would get so high, it was outrageous.
It was outrageous. Yeah.
I'd still listen to it every week. And I think that's probably where I ran into you first, because everybody, was pretty supportive. There wasn't too many people in that community yet. So,
Yes,
people
true.
doing interesting
True.
stuff were getting featured.
Yeah, that was sort of almost pre-ayahuasca, being like a large force and entity.
Right, absolutely, yeah. And your album that I ran into was kind of like almost field recordings mixed into music, along with kind of wisdom parables. Like I don't really know how to phrase that, but it was quite extraordinary. I listened to it a lot.
Yeah, that's the first record. It's called The Education of the Individual Soul. And I have a little story about how that happened if you're interested.
Absolutely.
It was 2008, and I was going through changes in my life. One of those things, sort of Saturn returns, and a lot of things were just falling apart. So a lot of changes happening. And at the same time, of course, I was being introduced to medicine circles and this sort of thing and meditation. And I was really getting into backpacking, going up to the Adirondacks and being in wilderness. And I had a band was kind of falling apart. So I started just making music for fun on the side that was instrumental, which later became East Forest. I just didn't know it at the time. And because I was doing the backpacking, I was getting really tripped out by these spaces. And so I'd record them on field recorders to capture the feeling and the sense of space. I felt like it worked pretty well to help me remember the space and the feeling, like crickets or wind or leaves, and I'd record stuff just in life too, like people talking and friends in New York City. And what happened was, I was going through this process discovering ceremony as well. So I was having some of my first really major eye-opening moments and experiences spiritually through psychedelics. So about a year went by and I was making this music on the side. And after the end of the year, I sort of had an album. I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to it now. And I'm going to take mushrooms to sort of honor this process because that's what inspired it originally. I'd had moments in my life, a handful, with music and mushrooms that were unbelievable, but I didn't understand how I got there or what it was. I didn't know, but I knew I wanted to get back into that space. And so that's why I was like, I'll write music for that, for me to use. And so I took some mushrooms, and when they came on, I remember I laid down on my bed, I put my headphones on and hit play on the little computer. And it was just like this amazing 45-minute journey. That's all the record was, where it allowed me to forget how I made it. It allowed me to step away from it and not be in it anymore, the making of it. So it's just I was experiencing it. And in the field recordings, I was hearing everywhere I'd been the last year. I heard my mother in there, all the places I'd hiked, the people I'd talked to and stuff. And they were all giving me these little messages, like literally in the song, because they're saying things, but now it had meaning, had deep meaning. And by the time I got to the end of it, I'll never forget the feeling taking off the headphones. And I felt like my life had changed. Like as if I had created this album without knowing what I was creating. It's like my soul had tricked my ego into doing it so I could use it as a tool in that moment to transform into something new. And it was just one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. And that album was very special to me. And I thought that was good to go right there. But I tried it with my roommate, and he had a really powerful experience. And then my partner at the time, and she had the same. And then, like I said, my friend started getting circles together, and it all grew from that record, actually.
Wow. And you said that was one of your first records?
That was the first, yeah.
Wow.
That was the first one.
And do you think that was 2008 or something like that?
It was 2009 when it came out. But yeah, I remember finishing it. That was in September. That was September 16th of 2000 when that happened.
But I quit my job and moved to Utah shortly after that, which is interesting.
Utah took a while. Yeah, it took a while to get to New York, and then I was in Portland, Oregon for a while. And then recently I went down to super nature area in southern Utah.
Right. Oh, I was saying I moved to Utah.
Oh, you did, right?
Right around then.
Well, there you go. See, it makes everyone become Mormon and move to Utah.
So, yep, the unintended consequences. Yeah, well, that's really, really awesome. And I would love to know if others, if listeners know of folks that have had a similar creative process, please bring them forward. There's got to be other musical stories that are somewhat similar, but a lot of music goes totally undiscovered.
I think there's a lot of music that's inspired by psychedelics, a lot of art, a lot of things, technology. It's a big part of the creative inspiration for a lot of people. I don't know if there's many other artists who then dedicated their work to that particular medicine, but that just sort of happened for me. And I feel like I've been in this symbiotic relationship with it for quite a while.
And were you playing or creating music like well before you released that record and had these experiences?
Sure. Just with the different bands and stuff, more like indie pop, trying to get famous, that kind of thing. And East Forest became more of a gift and a completely different non-commercial type approach that has been hard sometimes to explain to people. It transcends a lot of genres. So I can't just say, oh, it's this, but right. I get called everything from I'm just a DJ or an electronic guy or like a yoga guy but hey, what are you going to do? I don't expect people to totally understand the hows and the whys.
I guess that's one part of art, right? Like you put something out there and then everybody else kind of takes their own meaning to it.
Sure. And that's all good. You just kind of let it go.
Yeah. When was the first time like you had like a psychedelic experience, or how did you get involved in like becoming interested in this realm?
My first was in college. Yeah, I was with mushrooms as well. And I got lucky. Like I had a really powerful, strong, transcendent experience, but it was positive the first time. And I was outside at like this festival, and I remember going over to these cherry trees, and then the medicine just kept going, and like I lost a sense of what time was and myself and that ego, the classic stuff that can be really frightening, but I remember it being really blissful and amazing. I didn't understand what the hell had just happened. I had no context for Eastern mysticism or this, even the idea of ego disillusionment. I was like, I am my ego, this kind of stuff. So that definitely spurred my curiosity. And it was more just over the years, I kept experimenting here and there recreationally, but not still knowing. I had no teachers or path. So it wasn't until my late 20s, as I was sort of speaking to, that I started to see other ways of doing it. And that really unlocked a lot for me and set me more down a ceremonial, intentional path with it. And one that's frankly quite infrequent. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have a large impact in my life, right? It's just, but I'm not taking that medicine that often at all. It's been a while, actually, a long while.
Breaks are useful. It's useful to integrate everything in between and work in this reality.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're here, right? Is to be in this reality. So it's definitely the main grist for the mill.
We talked to a client last night about regularity of dosing, and she had just had her first intentional mushroom session, and a week ago. And I was like, how soon is too soon? And I think we came up with at least 3 weeks between sessions if you're doing kind of ceremonial, really deep work. But really every 3 months or even, once a year is probably okay for some folks.
Sure.
Quite the question.
What's the old saying? Like after a big experience, wait 3 weeks before signing any documents, making any big decisions, no tattoos, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. No big decisions from 3 to 6 months or so. But some people, I don't know, I heard this interesting thing about like a window time where like there is something that could be actually really beneficial to act on. And there's like this window time where like maybe you should act on it, while other times like waiting longer is probably could be better. So yeah, it's interesting. I feel like
maybe we'll say tattoos definitely wait. Don't necessarily get the DMT tattoo all over your chest. But maybe the other ones you can pull the trigger.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what else you're up to. So you mentioned the podcast earlier. So did you just somewhat recently start your podcast?
It was last year. Yeah, it's about getting up to 50 episodes. It's a weekly conversational podcast. I also offer guided meditations every fifth episode or so. And I love it. It's a wonderful way to get to know different people that I thought I knew or that I don't know at all. So it's anything from researchers and to musicians, to meditation teachers, to friends. And we talk about consciousness, music, technology, psychedelics. I mean, really, there are no rules, but that seems to come up a lot, that kind of stuff. And it's been awesome. Like I said, I'm just I do what I enjoy, but I want to give different doorways for different types of people to enter into this ecosystem where I'm just sort of presenting different methodologies for learning about yourself. You know, the music's the bedrock of that, but the retreats are another way because FaceTime is really nice.
Let's talk about the retreats. What do you do there?
They're usually the one in southern Utah is more of a wilderness and wellness retreat. So it's a lot of being out hiking into the landscape in southern Utah, doing yoga and Tai Chi and stuff like that. But the rest is music and using music as a tool, whether doing ceremony or celebration or meditation. So I do different types of performance and things like that. I have a studio there too, so I can kind of show people a little bit behind the scenes and play new work for them. But we also do one at Esalen. You guys know Esalen? Of course you know Esalen. Yeah. You guys are psychedelic heads. Yeah, so we teach at Esalen, me and my partner, and her name's Marissa Rada Wepner. And so that's different in the sense of, Utah is about the big sky and hiking and desert and high desert and mountains. And this is like the ocean at Esalen and hot springs and more rejuvenation and kind of staying put and just that kind of stuff. So that one's the actual workshop, besides soaking in the hot tubs, is about music as a tool and giving people different experiences of that, whether it's through, I do like a ceremony concert versus doing music with the yoga versus music outside while we hike versus co-creative music, different ways and we're discussing like how we're using that consciously to go inside.
So the Esalen retreat is June 21 to 23. It's an auspicious
the
timeline.
Next one, yeah, which is the summer solstice that night, and is the release of the third chapter of the Ram Dass record.
Awesome.
Nice.
So that one was a nice alignment.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Do you have like a music school background, or how did you get into music?
I've always been into music, but I went to public schools and did normal choir and band and stuff. And then in college, I went to Vassar College, which is in upstate New York. And apparently the Steinway guys' daughters went there back when it was an all-girls school in the 1800s whenever he had daughters. And so he gifted the school like so many Steinway pianos. I think there's 70, some of them. So there's one in every lounge, every practice room, every hall. It has all these different Steinways, and they're tuned and maintained. I had never played a real instrument before, and I had played piano at home, took lessons for a few years as a kid, but I really hated it and wasn't that good. Just trying to read typical piano songs. And I went to Vassar and sat down at a piano, and one of my best friends there loved playing like Springsteen songs and Elvis Costello and Beatles, bang it out on the piano, kind of a chord approach, like you're playing guitar tab chords. And it was so fun, and I could understand what he was doing, but I was like, wait a minute, you're just playing the chords? He's like, yeah, man. You just do like this. You like the bass. You play the root with the left one finger, and then you play the chord with the right. And I was like, oh my God, I can very quickly now play all these pop songs I like, and I could sing along. That was fun. And I'd never played like a chord on a piano where all of a sudden it sounded good. Like the instrument sounded good. And you're like, I want to play another one. Like the piano I grew up on, it sucked. Like you play a chord, you're like, ugh, like stop. Like it hurts my ears, the tonality of it, and it's just junk. And so this really just fed itself. And then I started writing songs, and so I got a late start with it as far as writing my own stuff. And then I was definitely a baby of the digital movement, where in 2001, when the first like digital interfaces came out with the old iMacs, and you could get Pro Tools and like record at home basically, as opposed to that whole studio system. And so my very, very, very first record it was like 25 records ago, was made on a little iMac with Pro Tools and learning how to do that stuff. And yeah, and then that just allowed me to you get better by doing more, just making more and more and more and learning as you go.
Now, Vassar College, looking at it on a map, I noticed right away that you're very close to Wappinger Falls, which is where the new COSM is.
Yeah. It wasn't there when I was there, but I've been to the new COSM since. Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, it's interesting. Something about the Hudson River Valley. Some of the oldest mountains in the world, from what I understand, are right there, the Catskills.
It's beautiful. I love those Hudson River Valley painters who would paint those landscapes of that area, because in the fall, oh my God, it's special. It really is.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about the new album a little bit. Where can people find it?
Anywhere you listen to music, or if you go to eastforest.org, that's, I suppose, if you want to download it, or if you're like a music person like me and you want it in the highest quality, that you can get it there, like lossless quality or waves and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's important for breathwork and for psychedelic sessions. I don't think people totally understand audio quality
yet. You.
We've been drilled in our head that the quality matters when we're putting together breathwork playlists. Our teacher has a high standard for it. He doesn't even want to play regular like FLAC or lossless files. He just is like, no, you got to play the CD. Or he's very.
We've had to educate him. Education goes two ways with audio quality, but yeah, FLAC is where it's at, or like a really high bitrate MP3 for these things.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a real reason. It's not just because it sounds better. It's a pressure wave hitting your body, and it's less fatiguing on the ear the better it sounds. And so you can last longer without it essentially irritating you. And for a psychedelic experience, that's important. I mean, it can really be that last bit about whether it can help you fall into it more, or it's sort of gently pushing you away. And they might not be able to hear it themselves because they don't know what they're trying to hear. But their body will understand that quality difference for sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. It's I always wonder, like, are people, well, there's easy room for improvement. Like, we can get better quality speakers and headphones or whatever we're using, and it's just kind of an iterative process for people when they're getting involved. Like, you want to be perfect right away, but perhaps you have to take your time.
I mean, streaming music right now is, except for Tidal, is essentially an MP3. Mm-hmm. And some of it's pretty good if you get, premium services, but it's still not the same as the original quality or lossless. I mean, you can hear it in like the higher frequencies or like the hi-hats and stuff. It sounds kind of wishy-washy and tinny. And so it will probably happen in a few years as, say what you want about 5G and stuff, as speeds increase. I wouldn't be surprised if the streaming services start upping their bit rates, because people will want that and they have the speeds for it. And right now they just have the speeds for what we're doing. So that's part of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I've tried to consciously stay out of the 5G thing, but I think you're right. As speeds increase, people are going to demand it, and it would be a reason to go for Apple or Spotify or whatever you're going to be paying for. Yeah, and not to mention, it's still okay to buy people's albums, people. It's, in fact, probably highly recommended.
Well, Apple removed the ability to download music. So now it's just a streaming service.
Really?
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's really intense.
And so you can really, now you have to use Bandcamp or something, because or Tidal, I guess, which I don't have experience with, but apparently it's higher quality if you want it to be.
It's Tidal?
It's Jay-Z's streaming service, Tidal.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the reasons they did it. But like you said, a lot of people don't care or understand. But it's at least admirable that that's one of the things that they built into the system.
Right. Tidal. I was having trouble hearing it, but Jay-Z Tidal,
Yep.
you get it. Yeah, I've heard a lot about it. I haven't really checked it out yet, though. It's going to be a really complicated thing for artists to figure out long term. One of my friends is a psychedelic artist, a DJ, or I guess electronic producer who DJs, and she was talking recently about how hard it is to make a living doing music. And so I think she started a Patreon to kind of get like
Oh, how's that going
support.
for her?
I think fairly well. She goes by Living Light. If you've ever
Living
bumped into
Light.
her.
I'll check it out.
I'm sure you've been to the same festivals as her. You're bigger in the Boston area. Yeah, it's curious. I don't have any good answers other than we should be paying artists money somehow.
Yeah, I mean, that's a complicated thing. I mean, in some ways, more and more money is going out than it ever did before. Maybe less to the bigger people, but there might be something to do with blockchain that could potentially open up more revenue attached to songs as they're streamed, so you don't need all the middlemen. That could happen, but it's hard to say. You know, things shift around so fast in this industry that I feel like every couple months I'm just doing something different. You know, there's a different approach.
So, are you touring and playing venues?
Yeah, I tour a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm doing a ceremony tour that as a venture I'm doing called East Forest Ceremony that mixes concert and ceremony and ritual. So it's like done in the round. So you can lie down or sit on the floor or has some guided meditation and ritual involved with it. But it's also a concert that you're watching. Yeah, it's really cool. It's a way to like really drop it into the concert experience.
Cool. What type of like ritual or ceremony? Just like the lying down aspect with meditation, or is there like another part of that?
There's some breathing stuff and sort of it's like guided meditation, but then they have these cards or books that they're writing certain things down at different times, and it's combining elements of cognitive behavioral therapy and hypnosis and things, ways of helping plant ideas into our unconscious and or you could say into your hearts, but it's actually to work with your brain and to actually make this stuff work. And doing ritual and ceremony is sort of part of that too, right? That's another way we're sort of working with our minds to tell it that this is important. So yeah, there's different things that kind of get peppered throughout the experience that builds in a cohesive way to help you discover what you want to do, what you want to choose to do.
Sounds pretty cool. And did you create this format, or have you been like collaborating with other people and co-creating?
I did create it. Yeah, it's just been in development. So I've been doing it not even a year, but it feels like a little bit of a lab. It's trying different things, and it's sort of like the old days of. It's a different form of ceremony. Instead of like strict medicine ceremony, it's like, well, how do we do this in a public space in a shorter period of time without overt medicine that's except for meditation and music and breathing? I've definitely seen a few people on substances. I don't know what, but I'm like, all right, I got you, bro. But as long as you can keep it together.
Yeah.
But that's up to them.
I was at a festival not that long ago. This band, Reed Mathis and the Electric Beethoven, were playing. It was the first time they ever did it this way. I think there were some substances involved with the musicians, but he started going on this like long 20-30 minute kind of talk about how like music and like this concert festival thing is a ritual, and it was just going on and on and on, and it was like 3 years ago, maybe. Pretty interesting and impactful. But I think there is something about, that festival experience or concert experience being ritual, but bringing in ritual elements, I think, is next level. I would love to see where that goes for you. And
yeah, I know for the Grateful Dead, that's why people went, right? It was to take acid and you go to the concerts, and that's why they jammed for all those hours. But This is just similar in the sense that it's speaking to a similar desire. It's just done in a much more structured way. And I'm trying to bring in some of these scientific things that we know now. There's some tricks we can do, and a lot of this I just try to follow what I would want personally. And I know for me, I love music that's deeply emotional, and I love concert experiences where I'm comfortable and I can really drop into it. And the music happens to be in line with that. It's not it's not abrasive. It's sort of gentle, generally speaking. But I like good sound, and I like what good sound can do to our hearts and our minds.
Yeah, I've been seeing like the music kind of collaborating with a lot of different wellness trends. I used to lead some hikes with Wanderlust, and I know the few years that I was doing some stuff like Trevor Hall was there, and they did like hiking and music, and then I think sometime like one hike probably included like journaling aspects. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Where did you do that? Because I did those. I did some of those too back in the day.
Oh, cool. I did the ones up in Stratton because I was living in Vermont at the time.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, Trevor's awesome. He and I toured last year together. I was on his tour for a couple months, and he's a great guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I've only found out about him was through Wanderlust and got to see him in concert. I think he played, and yeah, really great music.
Yeah.
I'm curious to, I guess, kind of come back to this psychedelic playlist quickly. We used to ask a lot, like we used to get a lot of questions, like how do I get involved in this psychedelic field as it's starting to grow? And you putting out a record kind of for navigating the psychedelic space is just really unique. I know people have been creating playlists, and there's probably have been people that created music to cater to this, but this is just like a really unique way to contribute to this like growing field in a sense, and a creative way. Most people think, to kind of get into this work, it's either through the academic route or something like that, but yeah, it's really cool to see this, because some of the music stuff is coming out through more of the academic circles on how to craft a playlist or craft music specifically for therapy. So when I was reading that about this record that was coming out, I was like, oh man, this is so fascinating, cool.
Yeah, man, that's why I thought it was so cool. What's so crazy about a lot of those, I've read a lot of those articles too about how to craft the music, and they teach this stuff now, and there's nothing wrong with that. It seems to work, but I wonder if any of them are musicians and have ever tried just performing live in that space and just trying to see that way what works. Because for thousands of years, in almost all psychoactive plant use in any kind of ceremony, there's essentially live music, whether it's a shaker or a voice, usually one or the other,
right,
or a drum. And there's something important about it emerging from that space and responding to it, being live. And you look at ayahuasca, right? And particularly with the Amazonian style, they have embedded into it the element of ceremony and the Icaros songs. Mm-hmm. And that is the ceremony. That is how they transmit the energy. And you never hear about people doing ayahuasca recreationally. Somehow the ceremony never became detached from the drug.
Right.
Whereas with psilocybin, it has ritualistic history, of course, and it probably has I know it has music attached to it as well, but it's the opposite. As a Western culture, we've only mostly used it recreationally, and there is no musical tradition attached to it. So what I wanted to create with psilocybin, because it was just close to my life, was a new musical tradition that would speak to our Western ears and would make sense to us. Mm-hmm. And it would be our shamanic tradition, not us taking another lineage or even another medicine like ayahuasca and, let's take the Icaros and put them into a psilocybin ceremony. That may work. I just think what I'm making will work better. And I've been trying it. And I've been saying, what you tell me, people, was that a positive journey? What worked, what didn't? And it sort of develops itself. So I think that's something we've been missing. And I think that's something that could actually really help. And so I hope that this album is used by individuals who feel moved, but by these research studies, and they can just try it. If it doesn't work for them, get data. Wonderful.
Right, that'd be cool to do like a comparative analysis on, like, say your track versus like a playlist somebody put together.
That would be awesome. That'd be so awesome. Yeah.
Any researchers out there, once the album drops, maybe you can do this in the future.
Yeah. But either way, as you said, it's a pretty open community, and we're just trying to help, and we're all just offering tools for all of us to just move forward in the world. And this is just another option.
Yeah, that's awesome. So do you, like, beyond SLN and this album, do you have plans like in the next, 12 months out that you're able to share or talk about?
12 months out. So that would be next spring.
April. Yeah.
Just some gigs and stuff, live events. Like I'm playing at the Science and Non-Duality Conference, which is an interesting conference in California that has to do with, so again, sort of technology and spirituality. But this record goes all the way through August. And then after that, there's probably more of the Music for Mushrooms stuff that goes through the rest of the year. Into 2019, things get or 2020, things are a little foggy. There's some talk about like an Australia tour and things like that, but I'm just trying to get through chapter 3, which is I have to deliver in a couple weeks, and Music for Mushrooms is coming out in like a month, so I'm trying to finish the mastering.
That's awesome. So you've I'm looking at your site right now. It looks like you've done a TEDx event where you performed live. Is that right?
Yeah, that was a while ago, but it was really cool.
That's an interesting audience.
They invited me to play.
Yeah. All right. So you're all over the States. It's cool. 420 in Chicago. People should check that out.
Yeah. Going to the East Coast soon. Just got back from Austin and Texas a couple days ago, and we'll be in Chicago on that East Coast leg in April, as well as New York City and some other places.
Right.
And then there'll be the West Coast in June, and here and there. So bouncing all over the place.
Yeah, good for you. Massachusetts. That's interesting. I don't know if you've been to Newport, Rhode Island, but it's a worthwhile spot to check some history out. It's 2 towns over from Westport.
I played there last year, I think it was.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Anything we missed? Like, I think we're at about an hour now.
I mean, there's infinite things we can talk about. No, man, you guys are great. We've just been chatting. It's been fun. And I think it's always worthy. I'm glad you guys do podcasts like this and just continue talking about all this stuff, because we need to craft new stories about it and just make it more okay and normal and connect with the others.
Yeah. Find the others. Well, East Forest, thank you very much for joining us. Everybody out there, check out eastforest.org for more. Definitely check out the album and check out a live performance if you can make it. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And there you have it, East Forest. I hope y'all liked that. East Forest is pretty cool. I really hope to check out some live events in the future, and maybe even host a workshop with them in the future if that fits at some point. So again, East Forest, thank you very much. Charting on Billboard, I think, and got a really substantial tour going. So check out the website and see if it'll be in a city near you. Very interesting stuff. Again, if you want to support the show, check out our classes. The live versions of Navigating Psychedelics for doctors and clinicians are the real cutting edge thing we're doing now. And we've got those books on Amazon. So check out Navigating Psychedelics for the Trip Journal and Integration Workbook. And we would love that. So thank you all for tuning in. Love you guys, and really just appreciate all you do to help us feel valued out here. It's a little lonely on this side of the microphone. Don't get to see too many people, but we know y'all are talking and you really like it. So even if you want to just say hi, shoot us an email. at psychedelicstoday, email@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time. This is Joe Moore signing off from Breckenridge, Colorado. Bye-bye.